Hi, my name's Ethan Palay, and I co-founded this Colorado School of Mines solar decathlon team with my good friend George here. And we have also in attendance Andrew, our design lead, and our faculty advisor, Tim Ono. And we were invited here to give about a 10-minute talk about our pilot project, the Mines Tiny House. So for those of you who don't know what the Solar Decathlon is, it's an international competition sponsored by the U.S. Department of Energy. It is a competition where about 20 student-led teams design and build a net zero energy house in the span of 2 years. The house is then deconstructed and shipped across the nation to the competition site, which incidentally is going to happen in Denver in 2017, and reconstructed in order to compete in 10 competitions listed here behind me. It draws in a significant amount of interest from the public. About 64,000 people attended the last competition, drew in, I think, 250 media outlets, and it's a pretty ambitious competition as well, taking a fair amount of students' time. Many times the design leads have to take an extra year to graduate, and they do put in a significant amount of time. Usually teams raise between $500 and $700,000 to compete. But I'm here to talk to you today about our pilot project, which is the Mines Tiny House. And the purpose of this pilot project is in order to optimize our designs for Denver, since the competition is going to happen in Denver. We want to test our more risky ideas for the solar decathlon and really plant the seeds for a strong team in advance. So on our timeline, I don't know if you can see, we're kind of stuck in stage 1 right now, where we're designing and building this tiny house, which is hopefully the construction is going to be ending by December of this year. But we're hoping to get something tour ready by October 1st, which is when the Golden Solar Home Tour is happening. And then in October of next year, we're applying for the Solar Decathlon, and we're going to do what we need to do over the following 2 years in order to win in October 2019. So basically the design of the tiny house is somewhere in the land between informing our solar decathlon design and informing the green building tiny house movement. So this house is going to be powered only by solar. It's going to be off-grid, all electric, which is pretty different from maybe many of the tiny houses you've seen. But other than that, the house is going to be largely designed to the constraints of the tiny house movement. So it's a maximum width of 8.5 feet, pretty narrow, and 13.5 feet in order to be road compliant because it's built on a trailer. So this 13.5 feet height is pretty constricting considering your trailer is 2 feet tall. So you're looking at 11.5 feet from the subfloor all the way up to the highest thing on your roof. But as I said, this is going to be a living learning lab for the students on campus, built to inform basically the community about the efficacy of green building technologies and also inform our solar decathlon entry. So the things we really want to get good, meaningful data on are windows, shading techniques, thermal mass, plants, and phase change materials. And we'd be happy to talk to you about this more in depth if you stick around after the presentation. So right now our building looks something like this, where we're going to be building this on an 8 by 24 foot trailer, and we have 3-foot cantilevers, overhangs on either side of the house. The slope of the roof is not flat, but about as flat as it can go while still being compliant in order to maximize the space inside of the house. And the solar panels are going to be on basically a portable structure in front of the home and not connected. So the solar is not going to be roof mounted is the point. And that gives us a lot of flexibility to test shading while still getting solar no matter what. So right now, we're in the very early stages of construction. So here are some pictures from the first build day where we paid a company to come out and put some spray foam into the base, and then we further insulated it with bat insulation and then rigid foam board, and then put the subfloor in. So this is a picture from the first build day where we had a fair amount of people come, not only from the school, but from the surrounding community as well. From this organization, Ron Larson did come. And the president of the university even came, and he made the first cut. So that was pretty exciting. So we have about 100 students on the listserv, but about 20 of us are the ones that are making all the magic happen. And we expect that number to double now that school is starting back up and a fair amount of new students are coming into the school. We're collaborating a little bit with some students at CU Denver as well on the architecture side. And we have a fair amount of industry collaborators. And the ones listed on this board here have put a significant amount of time and effort into helping us with our design and our build. So we're really grateful for that. And we're always looking for more collaborators. So in the past year, we've accomplished a lot, I think. First of all, just getting the school to support us. It's been a long process, but they're now 100% behind us and very excited to compete in the Solar Decathlon. They recognize the excitement that comes with the Solar Decathlon and the positive press and the positives for both the school and the students who are involved. So we're basically done with our structural designs, and we're moving into the electrical design portion while we're also erecting our walls in the next month. And we've fundraised about half of what we need, a little bit more. We fundraised about $25,000, and the cost of the project is going to be somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000. So we believe it'll be substantially easier to get fundraising when we have pictures of a completed house to show and just say we need to fill it up with the appliances we want. So for collaboration with CRES, first of all, I'm sure there's a lot of people in this room who are pretty knowledgeable about construction and electrical design, and those are some areas where we really do need help with consulting. And basically any connections would be really helpful to get us maybe donations or discounted equipment for some of the big ticket items like windows, PV, and batteries. But basically just helping us get the word out about our project and about our Solar Decathlon moving forward. Just BuildingExcitement is huge for helping us out. So I want to thank you for giving me 10 minutes to talk about our project, and I'll take any questions you have. Can you speak up for the last part of the...
Actually, we do have a microphone which is on the way. Let's try this one. That one works. Okay. What was the question?
I was basically asking about the phase change materials, if they were just salts or how those worked and what they were.
Yeah, so the phase change materials that we're looking into are kind of like a biomaterial, so they come in mats, basically, that you staple between the studs of your house. So they're basically designed to regulate the temperature around room temperature of the house. So basically, if it's too hot, then the latent heat from the phase change helps you suck in some of that extra energy and lower the temperature of the home passively. Yeah.
Okay, well, I wanted to congratulate you guys for what you're doing. I think it's a wonderful project. Looking at it from a kind of the standpoint of a consumer, your tiny house looks a lot like a trailer. And I wonder if you have been in touch with trailer manufacturers or mobile home manufacturers to see if they might be interested in some of the design features that you incorporate when the Decathlon's over.
So we got our trailer. So the house is built on a trailer, like you said, and maybe I'm misunderstanding your question, but the custom made. Are you talking about the trailer bed or a trailer home?
No, a trailer home by comparison.
Oh, gotcha. We haven't discussed too heavily about trailer homes per se, but certainly the tiny house movement itself. So maybe, so we've been in contact with people like Tumbleweed and the local tiny house movement, but I mean, I wouldn't say that that's too far from our scope. So that's certainly something we can do.
Can you say a thing or two about this tiny house movement? It may not be on everybody's radar. I mean, the question is, why would anybody choose to live in a tiny house when you can live in a gigantic 3,500 square foot house?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think since the 70s, the average home price is raised by, I think it's a factor of 7, while the average size of the home has raised by a factor of 2. And so affordability is really a huge issue for homes. I mean, especially in Denver, where finding an affordable house is quite difficult now. So people, they like the portability of a tiny house, but I think the main draw is the fact that almost everyone who has a tiny house doesn't have a mortgage. So if you're building your own house, you can do it quite easily for under $70,000. Yeah.
Obviously, you're following the limits for the size of a building that can be pulled by a trailer and can go under normal bridges. What are you doing about the weight factor?
So the weight should
Gotta
be
be under 15,000, right?
15,000. We actually, when we had initially talked about the scope of how heavy this thing is going to be, we were assured that no matter what we do with this design, we're not going to make it basically not compliant with driving across the road. I mean, actually, in the last week, we've been focused pretty heavily on the weight of the trailer, so that's something I could answer for you next week. But we don't think that it's going to be too heavy to drive on the roads. Yeah.
Okay, we have a question here.
Actually, 2 questions. One, beyond the environmental and economic issues that you've addressed, are there any other value statements that your project has around what you're trying to accomplish? And then second question is, given that there is a small house movement and a lot of them are on trailers, how will this project be distinct from a lot of the other small house or tiny houses that we've seen over the last 20 years?
Right. I think I'll start by answering your second question. So it's pretty distinct from other tiny houses, basically for 2 reasons that I can think of most importantly. The first one is that this house is going to be loaded up with sensors in order to test green building technologies. So we're designing our own sensor system, and it's going to be testing the temperature, the CO2 levels, the VOC levels, humidity, and light as well. So we're going to have real-time data that is available for people in the energy miner at any time. So it's really built to isolate certain building technologies and test the efficacy. And the second reason is because this house is going to be off-grid and all electric, and both of those things aren't very common in the the tiny house movement right now, and we weren't quite sure why until we started designing it and ran into a huge amount of issues. So it's kind of a fun project in that way because our scope is a little bit different from the normal tiny house and gives us a lot of cool engineering problems to solve, I think. Yeah.
Over there.
I follow what's happening in ski towns of the West very closely. And one of the things that's going on is there's a discussion, how do we provide more affordable housing? There's a little bit of discussion about tiny houses. So my question for you is, do you have any climatic assumptions built into what you're doing? Could it fit in a place like Jackson Hole, in other words?
Could it fit in a place like where?
Yeah, where it gets very cold, stays cold.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be more difficult to design a tiny house to be like maybe net zero energy off grid. If it's in a very cold area, you'd just have to insulate more, but there's no reason why you wouldn't do it. You'd just be taking a little bit of your space away from the inside of the house. You can always put more spray foam into the walls by, just increasing the size of the studs by a couple inches. I think the main problem that we're running into is the thermal bridging that happens through the studs. So our house is looking a lot into how to mitigate thermal bridging, and so basically we're not just throwing money at the problem and buying a ton more insulation. And so yeah, I'd love to talk to you further about that, but I do think that tiny houses could have a space in cold spaces, and I know that the city of Denver is looking into providing tiny houses for the homeless as well. And that's something I was involved in a couple years ago and could tell you a lot about. But yeah, they're just okaying a plot for the Denver Homeless Out Loud to build a tiny house village downtown in the Highlands.
We'll take two more questions and then we'll move on to...
Yeah, can you tell us again what you're studying in school and how you're going to monitor and accumulate the data for indoor environmental quality?
Sure. So we haven't gone too far into discussing the sensor system yet. We know that it's going to happen, and in the next few months we're going to be looking at that much more heavily. But we do want to test the efficacy of our ERV system that we're buying, a Lunos E squared ERV, and also the efficacy of we have some, what are they called, green walls that we're putting in, so living walls inside of the house, and we want to test if that does anything for the VOCs like people say they are. And actually the president of the university, his research is all in monitoring VOCs and air quality, so he offered help with his research group to implement a smart sensor system in order to do that. Yeah.
Will these data be available?
We're talking, so yes is the short-term answer, yes. We do have a website, yeah.
Is it going to be plumbed?
So it's not going to be connected to the city's plumbing, but we will have a pillow tank. So you can use the sink, shower, and it's going to be a composting toilet. But so we're going to have gray water that's going to be used in our living wall, and we're not going to have any black water. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Well, thank you very much.